They said it right in front of everyone. My mom, my dad, fork halfway to his mouth, eyes glued to his plate as if avoiding mine would make it easier. "You know, honey," she said with a tight smile, "maybe it's time you think about something real." I didn't answer at first. I just stared at the green beans I didn't ask for, next to the overcooked roast beef I used to love when I was 8. The silence hung for a second, thick and slow, until my younger brother chuckled. "She means a real job, not your little Instagram thing," he muttered, barely hiding the amusement in his voice. My stomach dropped. I forced a laugh too. That kind you give at your own funeral. I should have expected it. It always happens like this, under the guise of a family dinner, the smile stretched too tight, the air too polished, like a stage where everyone plays their part. And mine, I'm the joke, the delusional one, the one who won't settle down. I'm the one who works from coffee shops and doesn't own a printer. My sister, seated across from me in her perfect beige blouse, sipped her wine with a smug smile. She's a lawyer, just like Dad. My brother, junior partner at some finance firm Dad pulled strings for. Me? I run a digital media brand, content strategy, brand consulting, and yes, partnerships. But to them, I just post stuff. They never ask what I do. They never really want to know. They just wait for me to say something that sounds unfamiliar and then laugh like I'm pretending. As if I've built a fantasy world they all have to tolerate until I grow out of it. I clenched my jaw. My hands shook under the table. I felt like I was 16 again, trying to explain why I wanted to go to art school while they waved brochures from business programs. "We just want what's best for you," Dad said then. But what he meant was, we want what makes sense to us. So when Mom asked, "Do you have a 5-year plan?" I knew she wasn't really asking. It was a trap. "I do," I replied calmly. "I just signed a contract with a global brand, 6 figures. My name will be on a billboard in Times Square next month." I said it too casually, too quiet, and they blinked. Dad laughed. "That's cute," he said. "Like Photoshop or something?" My sister added, "Don't those spots rotate every 5 seconds? Anyone can buy one now." My brother just said, "Must be a glitch in the algorithm." I laughed too, because what else do you do when your whole family decides your life is a punchline? After dinner, I sat in my car outside their house, staring at the dark windows. I didn't cry. I never do. But I felt hollow, like a part of me kept shrinking every time I came back here. I thought of my grandma. She used to tell me when I was little, "The light in you is not theirs to dim." I used to believe that. I needed to believe that. She died 2 years ago, and since then, no one in that house ever spoke of my work with anything but doubt. I started the drive home, fingers clenched on the wheel, replaying the dinner over and over. I imagined what it would be like to walk away for good, block their numbers, stop attending these rituals of disappointment. But a small voice in me still wanted their validation, not approval. I had long given up on that, but just acknowledgement that I existed, that I mattered, that what I was building wasn't a joke. When I got home, I opened my laptop and stared at the email again. The final artwork, the approval, my face, my logo, the launch date. I forwarded it to myself, printed it, pinned it to the wall, and then I worked. I worked like I was building a cathedral no one believed in. I worked like every click of the keyboard was one brick closer to freedom. I didn't tell anyone. I just created, silent, focused, cold fire in my chest. And I remembered every comment, every eye roll, every time they cut me off when I spoke, every Christmas where I got the cheapest gift, every phone call I wasn't included in. I remembered it all, and I turned it into fuel. They wanted proof. I'd give them more than proof. I'd give them a spectacle they couldn't ignore. The week after that dinner, I disappeared from the family group chat. Not that anyone noticed. I muted it months ago anyway. I was tired of the passive-aggressive updates, the endless stream of pictures from my sister's baby showers, the "we're so proud of you" comments they posted on my brother's LinkedIn promotions. I wasn't part of their world. Not really. And maybe I never had been. But now I was building mine. And for once, I stopped asking permission. Every morning, I got up before the sun. I ran, I journaled, I built campaigns from scratch. My clients were growing, not just in number but in caliber. People who respected me, people who saw what I could do. I started hiring a team of freelancers who believed in my vision, designers, editors, strategists. We worked like an underground army, quiet, efficient, invisible to the people who thought we didn't exist. Every win felt personal. Every invoice paid felt like a wound stitched up. I stopped attending family events. I missed my niece's birthday, my sister's promotion dinner, dad's retirement party. I sent polite messages, sure, but they were cold, detached. I was done playing along. And funny enough, no one reached out. Not really. A quick, "hope you're doing okay" from my aunt. That was it. They had a script for me, distant, flaky, unreliable. It was easier to let me drift than to confront the truth that maybe they'd misjudged me all along. One night, I stayed up watching videos from the media campaign I just wrapped for a fashion client. The results were incredible. Numbers beyond what they'd projected. And I was the lead strategist. My name was in the deck, on the invoice, in the thank you call. I sat back in my chair and let it sink in. Then I opened my phone, scrolled through Instagram. My brother had posted a story, him at a steakhouse with a caption, "Celebrating success with the fam." Of course, the fam. I typed a comment, then deleted it, then typed it again. Finally, I just closed the app, because this wasn't about them. It never really was. The war was never outside of me. It was the voice inside that still asked, what if they're right? That voice was quieter now, but it was still there, whispering doubts, feeding the old wounds. I looked back at my computer, at the project folder named NYC Launch. It was happening. Times Square, my campaign, my face. 2 days before the launch, I flew to New York, alone. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even post it. I just packed a carry-on, booked a hotel in Midtown, and checked into a quiet room with a view of nothing but air vents and brick walls. Perfect. That night, I walked to Times Square just to feel it. The pulse, the chaos, the noise. I stood there in the middle of the flashing lights, watching strangers take selfies with brands I used to dream of working with. And now, I was one of them. The next morning, I met the creative team. We did final checks. Everything was ready. The campaign would go live at 7 p.m., 10-second rotation, center screen, prime spot. It wasn't permanent, but it was powerful. Enough to say, I'm here. Enough to say, you were wrong. I went back to the hotel to change. I picked the sharpest outfit I owned. Black blazer, statement earring, hair done, lipstick bold. I looked like the woman they never believed I could become. And yet, here I was, standing in front of a mirror, looking like the cover of a magazine, and feeling everything. Nervous, excited, terrified, ready. At 6:55 p.m., I stood on 47th and Broadway, phone in hand, heart pounding. My name was about to appear in the busiest intersection on the planet. I looked around. No one knew who I was, and that was the point. This wasn't about being famous. It was about visibility, about truth, about reclaiming space I was always told wasn't mine. And then it happened. The screen blinked, transitioned, and there I was, smiling, confident. The tagline bold, created by my name. The campaign colors lit up the block. People stopped and looked. A couple pointed. Someone took a picture. My chest tightened. My eyes watered. Not from sadness, but from relief. From finally seeing what I already knew. I was real. My work was real. My success was real. I took the photo. The one I'd been planning for months. Me standing with my back to the camera, arms slightly open, my name glowing behind me like a promise kept. And then I sent it to the family group chat. No caption, no emojis, just the photo. And I muted the phone again. I didn't check the chat after sending the photo. I couldn't. My heart was still hammering, not from fear, but from something deeper. Release, like I had just exhaled after holding my breath for years. I walked away from Times Square, slowly letting the noise and the lights fade behind me. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel spiteful. I felt clean, like something had been scrubbed off my skin. Back at the hotel, I took off my makeup, changed into sweats, and lay on the bed. My phone buzzed once, then again. I stared at it for a while before flipping it over, screen down. I didn't need to look, not yet. That moment in the square, that was mine, untouched, unspoiled. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel proud without needing an audience. The next morning, I woke up to 27 unread messages. The first was from my sister, a voice note, of course. She never texts when she wants control. I didn't play it, just skip to the next one. My dad, simple, "We need to talk." My mom's message was longer, something about surprised and "you should have told us." My brother sent a GIF, some celebrity clapping slowly, typical. They didn't get it. They never would. This wasn't about surprising them. It was about surviving them. I waited 3 days before responding, and even then all I said was, "It wasn't for you," because it wasn't. Everything I'd built came from the ashes they left me in. Every client I signed, every project I led, every night I worked until my vision blurred, it was all for the version of me they tried to kill with laughter and doubt. The girl they called sensitive, the one they excluded from family decision, the one they made sit at the kids' table long after she grew up. She was gone, and what replaced her wasn't angry. She was precise. A week later, my mom invited me to lunch. "Just us girls," she said, like we were friends. I almost declined, but part of me wanted to see if they'd changed or if they were just rattled. I arrived 10 minutes early and ordered an espresso. She walked in wearing her usual floral scarf and fake sympathy. I could smell the manipulation before she sat down. "You look successful," she said, smiling too wide. I didn't reply. I waited. She stirred her tea slowly, like she was crafting a monologue. "We didn't realize how serious you were about all this," she said. "It's impressive, really. We're proud of you." I laughed, quietly. "Proud?" I repeated. Her smile faltered. "You told me to get a real job, remember? That was just dinner talk?" She blinked, caught. "I'm not here for validation," I said. "I'm here because I want you to understand something." She crossed her arms. "Go on." "I built something real. Not for you, not for Dad. Not for some family photo album where I get cropped out later. I built it for me. And I don't need applause. I just need space." She looked down. "And if you can't give me that, then we're done pretending." For once she was silent. No retorts, no guilt trips, just silence. And it was enough. After that, I left. Paid for both drinks. Walked out into the sun and didn't look back. That was the real Times Square moment, the one no one would post, the quiet reclaiming of my voice. At home, I hung the photo on my office wall. Not because I needed a reminder of that night, but because I wanted to honor the girl who stood there, uninvited yet undeniable. The phone still buzzed now and then. My brother asked if I could help his company with a social campaign. I said no. My dad emailed me a link to some article about digital marketing trends, probably trying to prove he got it. I didn't reply. My sister sent me a message about how jealousy isn't a good look and then blocked me again. I laughed. They were all spinning, and for once I wasn't in the center. I had moved on, not just professionally, emotionally, spiritually. The house they built out of judgment and hierarchy, I'd left it behind. I had built a different one with truth in the walls and light in every corner. And I invited only those who knew how to respect both, like Mr. Jensen, my old media professor, who wrote me after seeing the campaign go viral. "You did it," he said, "not despite them, but because you refused to be like them." And Maya, the editor who gave me my first chance, sent me flowers. "Thank you for showing up for yourself," her note said. I placed the bouquet under the Times Square photo. Perfect symmetry, because in the end it wasn't about revenge. It was about resurrection, quiet, defiant, complete. I didn't go home for the holidays that year. Not for Thanksgiving, not for Christmas, not even for Mom's birthday in January. I sent a polite message, something generic and respectful, but I didn't show up, and it was the best gift I ever gave myself. For the first time in my adult life, the holidays weren't about walking on eggshells or trying to earn approval I'd never get. They were quiet, peaceful, honest. I cooked for myself, set the table, lit candles, played music I actually liked. No passive-aggressive jokes, no backhanded compliments, just me and my own damn joy. It wasn't lonely, it was sacred. Around New Year's, I got a call from my cousin Ella. She was the only one in the family who never treated me like I was a failed experiment. We hadn't spoken in months. "I saw the billboard," she said. "It made me cry." Her voice cracked. "I always knew you were magic." I hadn't cried since that night in the car after dinner. But I cried then, because she meant it. Because she saw me before anyone else did. She always did. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You proved them all wrong." But I didn't respond right away, because it wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving me right, that I had something to say, something to build, something to give the world, even if it didn't look like the things they worshipped: certificates, cubicles, family trees built on control. "I miss you," I told her. "I miss you more," she said. We made plans to meet in the spring, just us. No forced reunions, no guilt-laced gatherings, just truth. In the meantime, I kept working. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I was carving, sculpting, honing my craft. Clients came one after another. Word spread. People started asking for me by name, not because I was trendy, but because I was good. I was better than good. And I knew it. Not with arrogance, but with certainty. I had bled for this, starved for this, been humiliated for this. And now I was undeniable. Then something strange happened. My dad sent me a calendar invite, lunch, his office, just the two of us. I almost declined. My hand hovered over the mouse, ready to delete it. But curiosity pulled me in. Maybe it was the way he wrote the message. "If you have time, I'd like to talk." No expectations. That last part, no expectations, that was new. So I went. His office hadn't changed in 20 years. Same bookshelf with leather-bound law books no one touched. Same degrees framed on the wall like trophies. Same smell of aftershave and control. He looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing him clearly for the first time. He stood when I entered, shook my hand. That was new, too. "I won't take up much of your time," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I sat. "I've been thinking a lot about you," he said. I waited. "You're not who I thought you were." I raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" He leaned back, fingers steepled. We raised you with structure, with rules. We thought that was the way, that if you followed them, you'd succeed. I didn't follow them, I said flatly. No, he said. You didn't. Silence. But you succeeded anyway. Another pause. And maybe we were wrong. I stared at him, heart frozen. I wasn't sure if I believed him. Not yet. But I heard it. The crack in the stone. The first real fracture. I saw the campaign, he added. Times Square. You think it's real now? He smiled, small and tired. I think it was always real. I just wasn't looking. That broke something in me, something old and hard. I don't need your approval, I said. I know. I'm not angry, I added. Then why are your eyes wet? I blinked fast. Damn him. We didn't hug. We're not that kind of family. But when I left, he said, I'm proud of you. And for once, I think he meant it. Not because I fit his mold, but because I shattered it and built something better from the pieces. On the walk back, I felt lighter, not because things were fixed, but because I had stopped carrying the hope that they would be. I didn't need to win them over. I just needed to win myself back. I didn't tell anyone about the meeting with my father, not Ella, not my team, not even Maya. Some things are too sacred to explain, too fragile to translate into casual conversation. It wasn't closure. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a shift, a quiet one, like tectonic plates realigning under centuries of pressure. I didn't walk away feeling victorious. I walked away feeling seen, and that was enough. The next few months passed in a rhythm I'd fought years to create. Mornings filled with deep focus, afternoons in strategy calls, evenings walking through the city with my headphones in and my thoughts sharper than ever. I felt like I was finally living inside my own story, not apologizing for it, not editing it to fit someone else's expectations. And then the email came. It was from the organizers of a creative leadership summit in San Francisco, one of the most respected in the industry. They'd seen my work, they said. My campaign had been submitted anonymously by someone on the team. I had been nominated for their Rising Visionary Award. The keynote speaker, Michelle Obama. I read the email 3 times before letting it sink in. This was real. They wanted me. Not the me I used to pretend to be at family dinners, not the diluted, digestible version, me. As I am. I stared at the screen, heart thudding. I thought about calling my mom, just for a second, but then I thought better of it. I didn't need her opinion. I didn't need her excitement or her critique. This wasn't for her. This wasn't about making her proud. This was for the little girl who used to doodle logos in the back of math class and got detention for not paying attention. This was for her. When I walked onto the stage that day, the lights weren't blinding. They were warm, like sunlight through a window I once thought was sealed shut. I stood behind the podium, took a breath, and spoke. About failure, about invisibility, about the sharp ache of being underestimated. I told the audience what it meant to grow up in a house where your dreams were treated like clutter, where your voice had to fight to exist. And when I finished, there was silence. Then applause, not polite, not performative, real. After the event, a woman approached me backstage. She was older, elegant, with silver hair and eyes like storm clouds. I needed that, she said. My daughter is trying to do what you did. She's drowning in expectations. I smiled. Tell her to keep swimming. I will, she said. But it means more coming from you. That night, I checked my phone. A message from Mom, just 1 sentence. I saw the speech. You were brilliant. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I doubted it, but because it came without strings. No suggestions, no corrections, just admiration. For a moment, I let myself believe it. I texted back, "Thank you." Then I turned my phone off and went to bed with a smile. Weeks later, I returned to the city. My apartment felt different, like it was no longer a hiding place, but a headquarters. I framed a photo from the summit and placed it next to the Times Square one. 2 bookends. 2 moments that told the same story in different languages. You're enough. One morning, as I was leaving a meeting, I got a call from my brother. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me to. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "Hey," I replied. "So, I saw your billboard. Again. Different campaign, right?" "Yeah," I said, keeping it neutral. "Look, I've been a jerk." I waited. "I didn't get it before. What you do. I still don't fully get it, but I respect it now. You've built something real." There it was again. That word. Real. It used to be a weapon. Now it was a recognition. "Thanks," I said. "That means a lot." He hesitated. "Also, do you know anyone who could help with a rebrand? Our company's shifting digital and, well, we could use someone like you." I smiled. "I'll send you a referral," I said, because I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't need to be their consultant. I had already won, and I was choosing peace. The thing about peace is, it doesn't always look like you thought it would. It doesn't come with a parade or a headline. Sometimes peace is just sitting alone in your apartment on a Tuesday night, drinking tea, and realizing you no longer flinch when your mom calls. Sometimes it's watching your phone light up with their names and not feeling dread, just stillness, power reclaimed, energy preserved. In the following weeks, I received more emails than I could respond to. Not just business inquiries, but letters. Letters from people who saw my story somewhere online, heard my speech, watched a clip go viral. They told me about their own families, the dinners where they were dismissed, the jobs that were mocked, the dreams that were laughed at. I read each one. Some made me cry, some made me want to scream, but all of them reminded me that this wasn't just my story, it was everyone. I started writing again. Not campaigns, not speeches. A book. It wasn't planned. I just opened a blank document one night and began with a line I couldn't ignore. They told me my job wasn't real, so I built a life that was. From there, the words poured out, chapter after chapter. It wasn't a memoir. It was a manifesto. A message to every person who's ever been called a disappointment, a black sheep, a waste of potential. A letter to the ones still fighting for air in rooms that call themselves family. Meanwhile, Ella and I met up like we'd promised. A small cafe tucked away from the noise, sunlight spilling over our table like grace. She brought old photos of us at 7, building magazines out of paper, scraps, and glitter glue. "You were always a creator," she said. "They just couldn't see it." "I think they were afraid of it," I replied, "of what it meant if I was right." We talked for hours, laughed, cried, rewrote our shared history with truth instead of denial. And when we hugged goodbye, I knew that blood doesn't make someone your family. Recognition does. A month later, I received an invitation, not digital, not casual, a real card, thick paper, gold trim, family dinner, homecoming edition. I laughed out loud. It was from Mom. Apparently, they were doing a big thing. Redecorated the house. Everyone was invited, even distant cousins, a reunion of sorts. And I was listed in bold at the bottom. Special guest, our digital star. Digital star. It almost felt like a joke, but I didn't feel angry. Not anymore. I didn't RSVP right away. I let the card sit on my counter for a week. Every time I passed it, I asked myself the same question. What would it mean to show up? Not for them, but for me. Not to prove a point, not to get revenge, but to exist fully, unapologetically. So I said yes, not because I needed them to clap, but because I no longer feared their silence. I arrived late, on purpose. I wanted to enter when the room was already full, when the conversations were buzzing, when I could walk through the door and let the sound drop, And that's exactly what happened. The moment I stepped in, every head turned. My mom stood near the fireplace, my dad by the bar, my sister talking to some family friend. All of them paused, and I, dressed in my sharpest black, hair slick, heels loud on the floor, just smiled. Not a fake smile, not a tight one, a real one. The kind that says, "I'm not here for your approval, I'm here because I belong." My mom approached first. "You came," she said, hands trembling a little. "I did. You look like someone with a real job?" She laughed nervously. "Like someone who knows who they are." I nodded. Finally, she reached for my hand. I let her hold it. And just like that, something between us softened. Later, during dinner, my father gave a toast. He talked about legacy, about tradition, and then about change. "Sometimes," he said, looking straight at me, "the future doesn't come dressed in what we recognize. Sometimes it arrives in the form of someone brave enough to be different." The room clapped. I didn't cry, but I felt everything. And for the first time in my life, the table felt whole. Not perfect, not healed, but real. After the dinner, I stayed behind a little longer. Most of the guests had left, coats in hand, kisses on cheeks, promises to catch up soon that everyone knew were lies. But I lingered, not because I needed more closure. I think I just wanted to feel the silence in that house one more time, without fear. I wandered into the living room, fingers trailing along the edges of old photo frames, polished furniture, memories frozen in curated snapshots. My childhood face stared back at me from a dozen angles, always next to someone else, always slightly off-center. My mom walked in quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. Chamomile. She remembered. We sat on the couch like 2 women who had nothing left to prove. "You know," she said, "I used to worry about you." "I know. I thought you were lost." I turned to her. "And now?" She sipped her tea. "Now I think you were just ahead of your time." That hit me harder than I expected. Not because it made everything okay, but because it was the first time she admitted she'd been wrong without wrapping it in a compliment. "I'm still figuring it out," I said. "We all are," she replied. We didn't need to hug. We didn't need to cry. The peace was in the quiet, in the shared understanding that the war was over, even if the scars remained. As I left, my father walked me to the door. He didn't say much, just placed a hand on my shoulder, like he used to when I was a kid about to walk into school. Back then, it meant, "You'll do great." Now it meant, "I see you." That night, back in my apartment, I opened the manuscript again. The book was nearly done. I reread the chapters about those dinners, those dismissals, the quiet rage that once kept me awake. It all felt distant now, like watching an old version of myself through glass. And then I wrote the final chapter. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation. I told the story of the Times Square billboard, not as a mic drop, but as a milestone, a point on the map between invisibility and presence. I ended with this: "If they say your work isn't real, let your life prove otherwise. Let your joy be louder than their doubt. Let your light be something they have to squint to understand." The book went to print 2 months later. It debuted to modest fanfare, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the email I got from a girl in Kansas, 17 years old. She wrote, "I read your book under my blanket every night for a week. My mom keeps telling me that writing is just a hobby, but you made me believe it's more. Thank you." I printed that email, framed it, hung it above my desk, because she was me. And maybe one day she'll be standing in her own version of Times Square, not asking for permission, not begging to be believed, but just shining. My life isn't perfect. I still get questioned. So, what exactly do you do? From strangers at weddings I still get side eyes from my uncle at Easter when I say I don't work in a traditional office, but now I smile. Now I don't shrink because I know who I am. And more importantly, I know who I'm not. I'm not their disappointment. I'm not their what if. I'm not the failure they whispered about when they thought I couldn't hear. I am proof. Proof that not fitting in isn't a flaw. It's a forecast. And I will never again apologize for the weather I bring. The book tour took me places I never expected to go. Not just cities or stages, but conversations, real ones. After each reading, people would line up, not just for signatures, but for permission. Permission to be misunderstood. Permission to stop asking for their family's applause. They'd say things like, "You wrote my life," or "I thought I was the only one." And every time I'd look them in the eyes and say, "You're not." I met a teacher in Chicago who told me she quit her job after reading my chapter on invisible labor. I met a single mom in Miami who started her own creative agency after seeing my Times Square post. I met a retired nurse in Seattle who said she finally forgave herself for living someone else's script for 50 years. Every story they gave me stitched something in me back together. It was like I'd spent my whole life bleeding in silence, and now people were handing me thread. In the quiet hours of those hotel rooms, I often thought about that dinner, the one that started it all. I could still hear the scrape of forks, the clink of glasses, the sting of my brother's laugh, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was just a scene in a movie I no longer lived in. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not forgetting, not erasing, but watching the memory like it's no longer yours to carry. One night, while on tour in Los Angeles, I got a text from my dad. "I'm proud of you. I read your book twice. You're braver than I ever was." I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I didn't believe him, but because I finally did. It took decades to get here, but that sentence, those few words, felt like the ending of a story I didn't know needed closure. I wrote back, "Thank you for reading it." That was all. We didn't need to rehash the past. We didn't need to apologize for every missed moment. We both knew where we failed, and we both knew what it meant to try again. When the book hit the bestseller list, I didn't throw a party. I lit a candle, sat alone in my apartment, looked around, remembered every night I cried into a pillow, wondering if I'd made a mistake choosing this path. Every time I looked at my bank account and wondered how I'd pay rent. Every time someone asked, "So like, what do you really do?" And I didn't have the strength to answer. Now I did. I whispered it to myself that night. I made something real. Not because a billboard said so, not because a publisher said so, but because I stayed. I stayed when they laughed. I stayed when they left me out. I stayed when the world told me I was foolish, and I built anyway. That's what makes it real. Later that week, my sister reached out. The first time in months. "Hey, just wanted to say, the book hit me harder than I expected. I see you now. I mean it." I didn't know how to respond, so I waited. Days passed. Then I wrote, "Thank you. I see you too." Because she wasn't the enemy. Not really. She was just a reflection of everything I once thought I needed to be. Perfect, palatable, predictable. She lived the blueprint while I built the blueprint. But maybe we were both trying to survive in our own way. We weren't best friends now, but we weren't strangers either. There was space now for both of us, and that was enough. Months passed, the tour ended. The book became a quiet success, steady and organic, passed between hands like a secret people were finally ready to speak aloud. I returned home, not to rest, but to begin again, because something inside me had shifted. The fire hadn't gone out. It had changed shape, softer now, steadier, no longer burning from pain, but from purpose. I turned my attention to mentoring, not officially, not with programs or titles or glossy bios, just conversations with young creators, with people afraid to speak too loudly, in rooms that never listened. I shared my story, but more importantly, I listened to theirs. It was in those moments that I realized something I hadn't yet said out loud. They didn't break me. They built me. Not in the way they intended, but through every act of doubt, they forced me to choose myself. Over and over. They thought they were belittling me. What they were really doing was sharpening me, like a blade pressed against stone over and over until it gleamed. I started recording a podcast, quiet, intimate, just me and a microphone, talking about shame, about failure, about the invisible battles behind curated lives. I didn't care if it became a hit. I just wanted it to be honest. And somehow, that honesty made it grow. Fast. One of the episodes, "My Parents Said My Job Wasn't Real," hit 1 million downloads in the first month. The comments were filled with people who had heard the same words, at different tables, in different accents, in different decades, but the wound was always the same. You're not enough. You don't belong. This dream is too soft, too strange, too risky. I told them what I had to learn the hard way, that the wound isn't the end, it's the beginning. And then the invitation came, not from a brand, not from a client, but from my alma mater, the same university where I studied media and was told more than once, "You're talented, but maybe aim for something safer." They asked me to give the commencement speech. I sat with that email for hours. The irony was thick, yes, but so was the meaning. It felt full circle. I accepted. And when I stood in front of those hundreds of students in their caps and gowns, I didn't talk about success. I talked about silence, about the moments no one sees, the nights you cry and delete your portfolio, the dinners where your voice cracks trying to explain your dream to people who don't even want to hear it. I told them the truth. The world doesn't owe you applause, but you owe yourself the courage to keep clapping anyway. The crowd erupted, not because I was a celebrity, but because I was them. I still am. Afterward, one of the professors came up to me, the same one who once told me to double major just in case. She said, I was wrong. Just that. No fanfare, no excuses. But it was enough. That night, I walked through campus alone, past the dorms, past the library, past the trees where I used to sit with my laptop and a granola bar, trying to convince myself I belonged. I looked up at the sky, clear, starry, wide, and whispered, I do. Because now I did. Not because they finally saw me, but because I finally did. A year to the day after that family dinner, I found myself back at the table. Same house, same dining room, same smell of rosemary chicken and freshly polished floors. But everything felt different. I was invited this time. Not expected, not pressured, invited. The occasion, a family milestone celebration, as the invitation read. My dad had written it himself, formal, neutral, humble. It was his way of saying, we're trying again, and maybe that was all I'd ever wanted. Not perfection, but effort. I arrived a few minutes early, on purpose. I wanted to feel what it was like to walk in and not shrink. And I didn't. My sister greeted me first, a real hug, not the air kiss choreography we used to fake. She introduced me to her colleagues with pride. This is my sister, the author. You know the Times Square campaign? My brother raised a glass to me across the room. We weren't close, but we weren't distant either. There was respect now, a quiet one, and that was enough. Dinner was served. Everyone sat. And there I was, no longer an afterthought, no longer the cautionary tale, just me, fully present, fully accepted. As we ate, my father stood up and tapped his glass. I'd like to say something, he began. The room went still. We've celebrated a lot in this house, promotions, birthdays, graduation. But today I'd like to honor something different. Courage. He turned to me. Real courage. The kind it takes to keep showing up when no one believes in you, to build without permission, to forgive without forgetting. My throat tightened. We didn't make it easy for you, he said, voice catching, but you still built something beautiful. And we see that now. He raised his glass. To our daughter, to her vision, to her voice, and to her work, because it is, in every sense of the word, real. Everyone clapped. I didn't cry, not then. But later, after the dishes were cleared and the lights were dimmed, I walked outside alone. The air was crisp, the sky full of stars. I thought about every step that led me here, every silence I swallowed, every door that closed, every time I had to choose between being understood and being true. And then I smiled because I chose right. The next morning, I woke up to an email from a major magazine. They wanted to feature me, not because of my parents, not because of a viral post, but because of my voice. They called it resonant. I called it earned. As I clicked reply, I looked around my apartment. It was still small, still a little cluttered, but it was mine. Every book on the shelf, every mood board on the wall, every coffee stain on the desk, all proof that I didn't need to scream to be heard. I just needed to keep building, brick by brick, until even the ones who never believed in me couldn't ignore the house I made. So, if you're sitting at a table right now, wondering if you'll ever be seen, stand up. Walk away if you must, and build, quietly, boldly, unapologetically. Because one day, they'll ask how you did it, and you'll smile, not for revenge, but for the freedom, the kind that can't be denied, the kind that, once earned, no one can ever take from you, not even family, especially not them. And maybe you've been there too, sitting at that table where every word feels like a test, where your dreams are met with silence or smirks, where your family, the people meant to believe in you first, are the ones who question you the loudest. Maybe they told you your passion wasn't serious. Maybe they laughed when you spoke about your vision. Maybe they loved you, but only the version that fit their mold. And still, you stayed for a while, hoping, bending, shrinking, until one day you didn't. Because deep down, something in you knew. The life you were meant to live wouldn't come from their permission. It would come from your persistence, from the nights you kept going, even when they called it foolish, from the mornings you woke up and chose to try again, even with no applause waiting. You learned to clap for yourself. You learned that validation isn't love if it comes with conditions. You learned that being underestimated doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means they're not ready for your light. And now you get to write your story. You get to show up, not as their version of you, but as the real one. The one who built something from nothing. The one who turned shame into strategy, silence into strength, rejection into revelation. This isn't just a story about proving them wrong. It's about proving you right. It's about finally realizing that the family table doesn't define your worth. The life you build outside of it does. And someday, when they see what you've done, when they finally look up and see your name where they said it could never go, on the screen, in the spotlight, in the hearts of strangers, you'll smile. Not for revenge, but for liberation. For becoming someone that even your past self wouldn't believe was possible. And if you've made it to the end of this story, maybe it's because it's your story too. So here's your sign. Keep building, keep walking, keep believing, because your job is real. Your voice is real, you are real, and nothing they say will ever take that away from you.